Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies, where we explore all things cinema. I want to welcome back to the show Nelson Aspen, who is a writer and journalist, and he's got a new book out, which is the third part of his trilogy, Dancing Between the Raindrops. This one's called Happily Ever After. Nelson, welcome back. Thanks for being here again.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I love this. I love your show. Certainly, I love the films. And I'm excited for your choice of film today.
Oh, me too. Me too. I'll just read a brief synopsis of Valley of the Dolls for people who if haven't seen it or if you haven't seen it in a while. Lured by their dreams of fame and fortune, three ambitious young women enter the world of show business and discover how easy it is to sink into a celebrity nightmare of ego, alcohol, and pills, the beloved dolls. This starred Parkins, Patty Duke, Sharon Tate. It also has Lee Grant, Susan Hayward. I love the cast actually. It was directed by Mark Robson, and it was adapted from the book by Dorothy Kingsley. Wait, what? No, that was
Jacqueline
Jack.
Suzanne.
Sorry, what am I saying? Jacqueline Susann. My mistake. The screenplay was by Dorothy Kingsley. Um, do you remember the first time you saw the film and what your initial impressions were?
It's interesting. I remember my mom had read the book. I mean, the movie came out in '67, so I was four, but I vividly remember the Jacqueline Suzanne book cover with the pills on the front cover of the book. So that was in my brain. And then growing up, I was taking piano lessons, and one of the first things I learned to play was the theme from
Oh,
Valley of the Dolls that Dionne Warwick sang.
I love the
Gotta
theme.
get up, gotta get, need to get off of this ride. But yeah, it I was obviously too young to see it in the theaters, but I remember it being in heavy rotation on television,
Oh.
reruns, and Barbara Parkins leaning her head against the train window as the small town was going by. And as a little gay kid in Pennsylvania, dreaming of a career in show business, the movie immediately captivated me because that's how I got to New York City on the train, and I would be singing the theme from Valley of the Dolls as we chugged our way to New York City,
Oh,
and
I
my
love it.
dreams of Broadway. And you kindly mentioned my trilogy, the Dancing Between the Raindrops trilogy. That's about four friends over the course of 50 years trying to make it on Broadway and in
Oh.
Hollywood. So the movie spoke to me early on the way that all those Hollywood movies speak to people, whether that's, I don't know if you remember The Best of Everything with Hope Lang and Joan Crawford,
Oh
or
yeah.
even The Bad and the Beautiful. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a big classic. But those Hollywood showbiz stories
Mm.
really spoke to me as a kid.
I've always loved them as well. I have such a soft spot for the showbiz stories, and I first saw this 14, 15 years ago, and I have always loved this film. I can watch it again and again. It is so I don't understand why it gets this reputation as like so bad it's good, quote unquote, because like yeah, sure, it's campy and maybe it's got some cheesy dialogue sometimes and it's over the top to a certain extent. But I mean, I don't know how you can watch, like, particularly the Sharon Tate story is so emotionally um, heartbreaking. Like, it gets me every single time. I mean, I don't know how you can watch at least her story and think, oh, this is not good.
Well, I mean, it is definitely a melodrama,
Yeah.
and it spawned all of the soap opera tropes that we think of today, and it's camp. Obviously, I mean it's showgirls or mommy dearest level camp, and yet they all took it so seriously. And
Mm.
Patty Duke, I mean, Patty Duke was, she was a child star from The Miracle Worker, and had an Oscar in her hands, and so she was known as a very prestigious actress. And it was one of those films, like not unlike a Steel Magnolias or The Women or any of those films where everybody in Hollywood was in consideration. They were either fighting to be in it or they were fighting to get them in it. So
Mm.
it was just serendipity that the particular cast assembled the way it assembled.
Mm.
And part of the legend of it also, in the camp value, is to have missed out on Judy Garland
Ah, yeah.
in the Susan Hayward, Helen Lawson role, but to have existing footage of Judy's wardrobe test, to have existing recordings of her song from the show, from the film that was never used, and her voice was never used in the film, and even Susan Hayward's voice was dubbed by Margaret Whiting. So
Yeah.
there are as many backstage dramas about this film as there are on in the script.
Right. Right. And there's I believe Stephen Robello wrote a book about it, the making of it.
I
I don't
haven't
know.
read that book,
Yeah.
but why not? I mean, there's got to be, for fans to have that collection of anecdotes. And
Right.
fans still will go to screenings of this. It's not just Rocky Horror that gets people up off their feet at a screening.
Right.
Everybody knows the lines. Just to scream out the word boobies is is part of, I don't know, camp screening culture.
I imagine you've seen it in the cinema?
I have seen it in the. I think it was back in college.
Okay.
Not surprisingly, I was a theater major, and they would have screenings of films, contemporary and cult classics, and I think that was the time I saw it on the big screen.
Does it get a lot of laughs? Because I was just watching clips of people watch, and I was like, it's funny because when I watch it, I don't laugh, and I take it very seriously. But then when I saw people laughing, I was like, oh yeah, I can see why some of those moments are funny. So I was curious
I
how audiences react.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, is because it's the shared communal experience. If you were watching it at home alone, or with your spouse, it wouldn't be funny. You would get caught up in the story and the drama of it. And you've got some serious actors in there, like
Yeah,
Patty Duke, like Lee Grant, even Martin Milner.
yeah,
And I've always loved Paul Burke. Paul Burke is one of the most underrated leading men of his generation. But back to him in a minute. But
yeah.
I think when you see it in a theatrical setting, it's the group experience that makes it funny, because there are lines that are campy or so dated or melodramatic that in a group situation, laughter elicits more laughter, which wouldn't happen at home.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, certainly it really made me laugh when I watched. I sent it to you, and I know you. I think you said you saw it, that short documentary
Yes.
about people's experience with this film, and they even turned it into a play, and they did this really exaggerated version of it, and people were laughing hysterically, and it is quite funny. I thought, wow, I mean, they go really over the top every single line, but I was like, oh my god, I just thought I would love to see that. I don't know if you saw it, the play.
I remember when it was running in Los Angeles. But it doesn't take much to satirize anything. I mean, whether
That's
you can
true.
satirize Shakespeare
Yeah,
if
you could do that with anything.
yeah, a pie in the face is a pie in the face.
But no, I've always loved it, and in a lot of ways, it was ahead of its time because it really showed what women go through in Hollywood and on Broadway, and the sexism and the objectification, and of course, part of the Patty Duke story is based on Judy Garland. But like I said, the Sharon Tate story really gets to me because this poor woman who was treated as though the only thing she had to offer was her looks, and you see that even as we first see her with that big costume she has on. She's got this thing on her head, and she says to the director, "Oh, is it? It looks a little top heavy," and he jokes, "Oh, you sure are top heavy," and everyone laughs, and you just think, yeah, this film was ahead of its time because she's treated so they treat her like an object, and then of course, as we see when she gets cancer and she has to have a breast removed as a result, she would rather die because she thinks, well, now I can't take care of this is all the spoilers are okay on this show. Now she
Well,
can't
yeah, I
take
mean,
care of her
if you,
husband.
you have to have spoilers.
Yeah,
If you
for
haven't
sure.
seen Valley of the Dolls already, the spoilers will not spoil it for you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and but that was so heartbreaking how she basically turned to porn, even though they called it quote unquote art films. And when she couldn't do that anymore, she just thought, well, I can't take care of my husband who's sick, and so I'd rather just be dead. Oh my, it gets me every single time.
Yes, and it mirrored in many ways the dilemma of Sharon Tate's own career, the actress who was playing that
Yeah,
role. I mean,
yeah.
and Sharon met such a terrible, terrible end
Oh
as a
my God,
victim of the
yeah,
Manson family murders. But she was a beautiful woman,
yeah.
and was undervalued as an actor because of her beauty. And that's a tale as old as
Of
Tinseltown.
course, of
Uh,
course.
and yeah, but the themes in Valley of the Dolls, it's interesting because you're dealing with suicide and illness and mental illness and drug abuse and homosexuality. I mean, all these things,
Yeah,
which abortion, things that were not talked about in polite
that's true.
1967 society, except in my house where we just love talking about all these things. Growing up. Well, I was lucky to have very progressive parents. So yeah,
Good.
I was not protected from these kinds of stories, and was encouraged to learn about these things.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it's a delicious film. It would have been, it would have been very different had Judy Garland played Helen Lawson as was originally intended. She just couldn't do it. Her addictions were
Yeah,
the irony of it all, that she couldn't do the film about addiction because of her own addiction.
yeah, yeah.
And the iconic copper pantsuit that she got as a consolation prize when they fired her became iconic in her concert years. She always
Mm.
wore that copper
Oh, I
pantsuit.
didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was, they paid her off when they fired her, and they let her keep some wardrobe from the film.
Right.
Susan Hayward wears a replica of that same outfit. But yeah, I mean, if you look at any of the Judy Garland concert footage after Valley of the Dolls, she's always got that. That's one of her main
Oh,
costumes
wow.
in her concerts. It's iconic. I'm not even a Judy Garland, nut, but that copper pantsuit is as iconic as her poppy dress. If you watch the Renee Zellweger Judy biopic,
Yeah.
the poppy dress is in there, and I think maybe a variation on the copper pantsuit too.
Oh, I see. Okay. I didn't know that. Bit of trivia there. Um, one thing that I'm not sure how you feel about this, and I could see why they did it this way because the first half, or the Patty Duke story, the first half of the film is like her rise basically, and everything's great, and she makes it on Broadway, and she's making it in Hollywood, and then it her husband, when Sharon Tate comes over by the pool, and then he tells her everything that's going on. She's they're putting her on these pills, and she's working all the time, and she's totally changed. The only thing I thought was like I could see why they did that because I think the film would have been another like half an hour or 40 minutes if they had maybe gradually built to that. So instead they just had all this sort of exposition through the husband. And I wondered if you felt it was a little sort of abrupt at that point to just like come out with all of that as opposed to. But I mean I could see why from a screenplay point of view they because with all three women how could you fit that all in?
Yeah, I mean, if it were a streaming series, yeah, you'd
Yeah,
you'd have the
yeah,
luxury of time. But I think it's people wanted to get to the good stuff.
right.
It wasn't trying to be Shakespeare. We really wanted to cut to the chase and get to all the juicy, juicy stuff.
Yeah.
And Patty Duke is a really interesting casting choice. Candice Bergen had originally been cast and had to
Oh,
drop out.
I didn't know
I don't
that.
know if I don't know if she was up for Neely, but Candice Bergen was supposed to be in it. They were trying to get Jane Fonda. Raquel Welch wanted to do it, but she wanted to play Neely, and they wanted her to play the Sharon Tate part. She didn't want to play the sex pot. Yeah,
Wow.
so it's interesting. You look at an ensemble like Sex in the City. How would it have been different if it had been four different actresses? How
Right.
would any ensemble? How would Gilligan's Island or the Brady Bunch have been with any other cast other than the ones we identify with? But Patty Duke, not a singer,
Right.
and to make her into a Broadway musical star and a pop recording star, was a bit of a stretch, but Patty was great. I thought Patty was beautiful. I remember as a kid, just maybe it was from the Patty Duke show, which she did when she was a teenager. I remember thinking she was beautiful, and not in the way that a Sharon Tate was beautiful, but just in the girl next door kind of beautiful. So to me, I really bought her as Neely, and of course the
Yeah,
cat
me too.
fighting with Susan Hayward. Yeah,
Oh yeah, throwing the wig and everything. Yeah, juicy is juicy stuff. Yeah, I sort of have I have mixed feelings about that, but I think you're right. They had to get to that. It's the second half of the film, right? So they had to get to that to the juicy stuff. The only thing we see is we see that moment when someone gives her in a those great montages, which are her like exercising and they're very
yeah.
campy and everything, and someone gives her a pill and then her husband just wags his finger, no, 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 and then she's like, oh well, I'll take it. It's they do give you that glimpse of, oh, something's wrong,
Yeah,
um,
and they almost play it for comedy, which of course
for
it's
sure.
not. And you think about the stars like a young Judy Garland when she was doing The Wizard of Oz. They needed that child to perform. So they
Right.
pumped her full of pills in the morning
Yeah.
and to get her going, and then they pumped her full of pills at night to get her to sleep. And it was a different time. Jacqueline Susann was very clever to write that pot boiler of a novel about it. As I understand it, the film rights were sold before the book even came out. So
I,
the plan all along, which I think from a writer's point of view, I mean, when I'm writing those Raindrops books, I'm writing them thinking cinematically. Will this ever be a series? I'm going to write it almost like a treatment, so that it's obvious that I would like it to be a series.
mm,
And I think Jacqueline Suzanne probably did that as well. And she wanted Judy Garland, and they did a press conference together, announcing that Judy Garland was going to be in it, which of course didn't work out. And then they I think they offered it to Ginger Rogers as
oh
well.
wow.
And Ginger Rogers thought it was too lewd. It was beneath her in terms of content. Ironically, Ginger Rogers replaced Judy Garland. I wonder if you know this. There were two biopics about Jean Harlow, one starring Carol
Oh
Baker
yeah.
and one starring Carol Lynley. And in the Carol Lynley version, Judy Garland was hired to play Jean Harlow's mother. And the script was so awful that even Judy Garland couldn't do it. She quit, and I was friends with Carol Lynley, and Carol told me the story of how Judy Garland advised her, I can't do this film; it's going to stink, and you shouldn't do it either. Of course, Carol had no choice; she had to do it, and they hired Ginger Rogers. Ginger
Oh.
Rogers replaced Judy Garland
Hmm.
as to play Harlow's mother.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean that whole sort of repertory company of actors from that era, they all sort of, I'm surprised Carol Lynley wasn't in Valley of the Dolls because Paul Burke was in everything in those years. He did Once You Kiss a Stranger with Carol
Yeah.
Lynley. He did, I think it was called Della with Joan Crawford. He was everywhere, but that sort of stoic leading man. And I
Hmm.
forget the actor who played Ted Casablanca, but who was briefly married to Patty Duke's character, and
Yes.
she says the F word when she calls them the
Oh
slur
yeah.
for
Yeah.
homosexual. She calls them an FAG, and
Yeah,
oh
they're
my
they're
God.
very open with that. I was like, oh, it's shocking now, but at the time, people, but it was sort of one step forward, one step back because they were open with homosexuality in the film, but then at the same time, it's like, oh, they're saying these horrible
Yeah,
homophobic words,
it was
you
very
know?
shocking at the time, even though the character wasn't gay.
Right?
She accused him of being gay,
Assumed,
and
yeah.
the character's name, Ted Casablanca, became uh, I don't almost like code in the gay community. And when E Entertainment started, one of their main anchors on E was an openly gay guy who changed his name to Ted Casablanca. So
Really?
in show
Oh my god!
business, there are two Ted Casablancas: the character from Valley of the Dolls and the E Entertainment reporter
Wow,
who named himself after the character.
I did not know that. Well, the actor is Alexander Davion. I'm not familiar with him.
I'm not either.
But yeah, yeah, but I mean it's it you know it, I it's funny because, like I said, it's shocking to hear those words. But even in that little short documentary I sent you, the people when they hear, they're laughing about it, and it's like the gay community like love to hear these sort of horrible words. But I can see why. I can see why from I guess from a somewhat of a humorous standpoint. Not that it's funny, but
Well,
um,
it can be funny because it's not the way it is now, kind of
right.
thing. Like it meant something different
Yeah, yeah.
somehow. So to be able to have the freedom to look back on it and not be threatened
I
by
see.
it,
Yeah,
I
yeah. Good.
think it probably is the attraction there.
Nice. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Um, the story Ann Wells, Barbara Parkins. It's interesting because I mean, she is obviously a major part of it, but to me, her story was the least appealing of the three because like we really start on her journey on the train, and it's great. You know, she gets this job as the secretary, and it's just, I mean, actually, now I see how it is funny that this 1 in a billion chance that someone's just like gives her this chance to become this famous model, and whoa, like it wasn't even what she necessarily wanted. But then
I'm
after
so
that,
much older than you, though. That was how we looked at the entertainment industry
right, of
in the
course,
60s.
yeah,
That was it. You pack your suitcase, you get on the train. I mean, even Ruby Keeler in 42nd Street, you're there,
you're gonna make it.
NYC,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you can be a star in just, from secretary to supermodel in one easy step. I think the character of Anne, Barbara Parkins' character, she's the least campy. She's the heroine. She's the
yeah, for sure.
beautiful, preppy, uh, you know, I guess ingenue is a fair description. So that sort of makes her less fun to watch. However, she bookends the film, and it's very different from the book. That's why, when you mentioned, I think Dorothy, the screenwriter, she was brought in after the original screenwriter was upset because he wanted the ending to be like the ending of the book. Spoiler alert:
Oh,
in the
okay.
book, um, Barbara's character, Anne, she gets married unhappily and becomes addicted to the dolls.
Right.
And they didn't want that ending for the film. She's more of a standalone, strong, sober individual, which
Right, right. I see.
the
Yeah.
Hollywood, the cleaned up Hollywood version.
Right. Yeah. 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 They do. That was one of some of the criticisms the film gets as well is that they sort of I don't know if they necessarily glamorize addiction, but some people, or they just kind of deal with it on the surface. Like even when we see Ann Wells, when she gets hooked on the dolls, like there she is on the beach with the water hitting her. Like it does look a little on the glamorous. I don't know if it necessarily glamorizes it. Maybe it's deals with it on a surface level, but the film is so sort of aesthetically pleasing as well. I mean, the cinematography by William H. Daniels, who did actually he did some really good movies. Shop Around the Corner, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Ninochka. He did so many amazing films. I mean, it every step of the way it never looks dark or gritty like when
No.
you're dealing with addiction films. Sometimes it always looks
Even
great.
even Patty Duke waking up with a handsome stranger, not knowing who
Yeah,
she is, where
yeah.
is she, who is he? I mean, it was still glamorous,
It's
and those
always glamorous.
that period of film. I think of all those Jerry Wald films. Like, didn't he do like? I think he did The Best of Everything and Return to Peyton Place, and you think about what's Splendor in the Grass. They all have that beautiful palette of
Yeah,
colors,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
the cast members are all these beautiful youngsters.
Totally.
There's just something lush and romantic about it. And Valley of the Dolls, and decidedly 60s. You can look at this and say that movie absolutely was between 1958 and
For
1970
sure,
for
for sure,
sure.
for sure.
But Valley of the Dolls is such a time capsule of the 60s.
Yeah,
And the irony is that the book was not. The book was written to take place
the 40s.
starting in World War II. And I
Yeah.
mean, and it spanned decades. Again, rather than who wants to see Patty Duke get old age makeup, they probably would have, powdered her hair with gray, baby powder or something. So
Yeah.
better to make it a concise time period.
Yeah, one thing that did make me laugh is that when they say when her agent couldn't get her up in the morning, she's late to set. And he's like, they're looking for someone younger than you. She's like, younger. I'm 26, and then he goes, well, you look 36. I'm like, well, 36. I guess at the time they considered 36 older than they do now, but I'm like, well, 36 is still pretty damn young. But again, that sort of those things that women face, those like quote unquote expiry dates. Hey, yeah, you're already getting older at 26. It just that made me, and she has a great line as well when she says, oh, if a woman, I'm paraphrasing, but if a woman walks off a set, she's temperamental, but if a man does it, it's like he has integrity. I thought, wow. It really was. The woman who wrote this book hated show business. That's for sure. But she was
Well,
right.
they've been saying that about women in business, not even just show business. But I remember when Barbara Streisand was, sort of at the height of her Hollywood power, Yentl time. They were talking about the fact that, well, why do you call Streisand a bitch just because she's a woman? If she were a man, you'd say, oh, power player, ruthless in business, a leader. So of course there's a double standard, not only about business, but certainly about age and ageism in show business. Believe me,
Right,
believe me, ageism is real. Even when you
right,
don't think it could possibly touch you, it has very long tentacles.
right. Yeah. Yeah, the film again, like it's like an expose. I mean, because it really holds up well. It was ahead of its time in a lot of ways, and the other thing I was going to mention was, it's interesting that I imagine in the book, do they seem like they're closer friends in the book? Because in the film, it's like it's suggested that they're close friends, but you don't really see them together that often. You know what
It's
I
true.
mean?
That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah, as I recall, I mean, I haven't read the book since I was a teenager, but yeah, I think it was as is usually the case with a novel. There's much more detail. There's much
right,
more
right.
intimacy between them. But hey, yeah, it also was that made me think of I don't know if you ever saw the film The Pleasure Seekers with Carol Lindley, Anne Margaret, Pamela Tiffin,
I haven't.
Brian Keith, Tony Franciosa, and that was a remake, a frothy musical remake of Three Coins in a Fountain. Again, the story revolves around three girls, close friends. There's definitely a thing there. You can go. We have a mutual friend and about Joan Crawford. So
Yeah.
you and I bond over Joan Crawford things. And I think it was called Sally, Mary, and Irene was an early Joan Crawford silent film
Oh,
about three girlfriends. I mean, I don't know what it is, but from Sally, Mary, and Irene to Sex in the City, people want to see these sororities stories.
right. Yeah, women trying to make it in one way, shape, or in this case, it's show business. But yeah, I again, I think the film would have needed to be much longer if they were going to really explore their friendship, which I guess they didn't want to do at the time. It would be interesting to see this made now as a series because I mean, it might maybe it'd be horrible, you
Or
know?
maybe
But
make a series of the book.
yeah, that's
It's
what I'm.
funny you say
Yeah,
that because Mildred Pierce is one of my all-time favorite films, the 1945 Joan Crawford version. However, and I was a skeptic to the very end when they announced the Kate Winslet Guy Pearce
yeah,
series. I think it was an HBO series, 6 episodes, 7 episodes, and it was more based on the James Cain novel
right.
than a remake of the film, and it was wonderful.
Yeah,
So I
I
mean,
heard. Yeah,
if you were going to do Valley of the Dolls, I think if you were going to dare to remake it, my advice would be do it from the novel,
yeah, for
and
sure.
not try and mess around
No,
with that what's locked in our brains from the film.
yeah. Yeah, I think it could work because the things that the film sort of missed or didn't explore enough, you could do either in a very long film or a series today. But I mean, like I said, I still love the film even with its campiness and over the top. I mean, I love camp in general. Not that camp is a flaw, but what people look at some well use that as a put down. I don't mean it as a put down, but the over the top qualities, I suppose. But I still I wouldn't want to have it any other way. I think it's just a delicious film.
People love camp. I mean, Dolly
Yeah,
Parton wouldn't be still going at 80 if people. She's the first one to admit she's camp,
right, right,
and
right.
that begs. I have to ask you, Robert. So there's there's always the question of Ginger or Marianne on Gilligan's Island, or Betty or Wilma on the Flintstones. So out of the three leading ladies, which one is your hot pick
Oh, the Sharon
from
Tate for
Valley of the
sure.
Dolls?
Yeah, the
I'm
Sharon
sorry, say
Tate.
again.
Sharon Tate's character for sure. Not, I mean, just yeah. I mean, her she had the best story, and I liked her the best in it as well. And obviously, she was drop dead gorgeous woman. So yeah, for sure that would be mine. That'd be my pick.
See, I'd go. See, I like a hot mess, so I'd have to go with Neely.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I've always gravitated. Maybe it's the caretaker in me. I've always wanted to
Oh,
take
I
care of them.
see.
But it's interesting you mentioned it. Barbara Parkins has a beauty
Oh yeah,
that
yeah.
that was very of its time. She was sort of like what my sisters wanted to look like. She was like the beauty queen in a 60s way. And as we said earlier, Patty Duke had the more girl next door. But Sharon Tate's beauty is really timeless. I mean, if you look at any, and she didn't get old, so we never saw what she would have looked like as she got
Right.
old. But just even looking at her pictures from then, she would always be considered beautiful in any time period, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Before we get to your book, was there anything else you wanted to mention about Valley of the Dolls?
Oh, I want to watch it again. I
Me too.
now I really have to give it a look with fresh eyes, and I won't laugh. I won't laugh. I
Yeah.
won't let myself laugh.
Yeah, I actually want to get it on because Criterion Collection released it 10 years ago. They just had a 50% off sale. I should have got it. But I really I want to see it. I want to see it again. I would love to see it in the cinema sometime, if it's ever out here.
I
But
don't know. There's a drinking game involved with this somehow. I think maybe every time they say dolls, you have to take a shot or something. I don't
mm,
know.
okay, I'm up for it. So talk to us about your latest book.
Yeah, I'm really proud. It's now I have a
Trilogy.
staff
Wow.
of three.
Yeah.
So it started with the first was Dancing Between the Raindrops, and which covered my life trying to get on Broadway in the '80s in New York. So it's a time capsule of '80s New York, and I had wrapped up a 30-year career as a talk show reporter, and people were asking for an autobiography. I interviewed every celebrity under the sun. I had covered every entertainment event possible. And I thought, oh, I'd love to write an autobiography. However, I never kept journals, or I was afraid I would miss something. I'd get something wrong. And if you're going to have the onus of writing your autobiography, you better get it right. So I thought, well, I'll fictionalize it, and I won't make it my story. I'll give myself an alter ego and tell my story through his eyes, which I did, and people liked it. So that spawned the second one, which was Dancing Between the Raindrops, the Hollywood Years, and
Mm.
that is a time capsule of 1990 to 2012 when I was living in Hollywood. So we had to finish it up with the last installment, Dancing
Ah.
Between the Raindrops, Happily Ever After, which gets me into middle age and deals with, it's Jackie Collins, another famous author named Jacqueline, from Jacqueline Susann to Jackie Collins. Jackie Collins was a mentor of mine for writing. And she said, you always got to put some sex in your books.
Ah.
Fortunately, I didn't have to invent too much for that. But she said, because even if people think, I don't want to read something sordid like that, they do want to judge you. So they want to read it out of curiosity, even if it's to be offended by it. So yeah, these books are very racy. They're for adults only, and they're true stories. I've rearranged some dates. I've consolidated some characters, and I've changed names to protect the indefensible. I'm not worried about the innocent, but yeah, I've changed some names to protect the things. But the last book gets pretty racy because it was the end of my career, and I fell victim to ageism in the television industry, which
Ah,
is very real. So it's also fun because I have interviewed so many celebrities that I was able to put them into the books, go back to my interviews, and create the dialogue out of my actual interviews. So when you're reading something that somebody has said that's quoted as dialogue in the books, it's more than half the time the actual conversations that I had with these people.
oh wow. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I'll have to read those books sometime. They sound really, really good.
Yeah, they're racy. Keep them in the bedroom. Keep them away from young people.
Well, that's fantastic. And where can people get a copy? Where would you suggest they go?
I just Amazon because it'll be so easy and it will come in a discreet brown wrapper.
Uh,
But they're fun. You don't have to read them in order. I say I write books that you can put down.
oh,
You can read a chapter at a time. It's episodic. As I said, I write the way I would be writing a film series. It's very episodic, and
okay.
it's scandalous, and I think it's a fun time. If you like Valley of the Dolls, you'll love Dancing Between the Raindrops because it's all the same kind of stuff, just set in the 80s, 90s, and aughts.
Oh, okay. Great. Fantastic. And do you want to talk a little bit about the Titanic book of yours being
Oh,
adapted?
yeah. The last time we were together, I think we were reviewing A Night to Remember, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about a few of the Titanic movies. Yeah, and your book.
But yeah, because I had written Kindred Spirits, a
Yes.
Titanic tale, which is a historical fantasy based on my sort of metaphysical connection with a particular first class passenger who perished on Titanic. So I enjoyed a whirlwind year since we last talked. I got to launch the book on the Queen Mary in Long Beach, the famous ship that was used for the exteriors in the Poseidon Adventure, the
Wow.
venerable Queen Mary. And then I traveled the world to different Titanic exhibitions. I ended up in Belfast, Northern Ireland, which was the birthplace of Titanic, and doing a book launch there, and was invited by Cunard to be a keynote speaker on the Queen Mary 2, sailing Titanic's route from Southampton to New York. And
Wow.
we got as close to the wreck site as 40 nautical miles. So I
Mm.
was able to do a remembrance on the ship for the lives lost, and that was really special. So I had this year of Titanic, and to cap it all off, a producer named Jude Gerard Prest, who was the executive producer on Netflix's hit documentary series Titan, the Ocean Gate disaster. He'd
Right.
actually been in the submersible. He'd been on the Titan submersible a few times
Wow.
repeatedly. And he produced Jeff Corwin's Ocean Mysteries. And so this guy has pedigree when it comes to Titanic. And he's adapting my book as a screenplay,
Wow.
which is super exciting to think. Yeah, and I gave it willingly. I'm like, take it. Yeah, I don't. You change whatever it is you want to change. I mean, how much can you change the Titanic? And it's not that he wants to do a blockbuster like a James Cameron Titanic with special effects. This is a very human story about this passenger and the constraints of the Edwardian era versus the freedoms that we enjoy today. So we'll see what happens with that. And I think the last bit of Titanic update is in October of 2026. I'm leading a Titanic tinged tour of Ireland that'll start
Wow.
in Dublin and go around Ireland and end up in Belfast for the Titanic experience at the Titanic Museum. So
Amazing.
I, this is the lesson, Robert, is do what you love and you never work a day in your life,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
Titanic has just been a hobby and a fun thing for me my whole life. and now it's like a full-time job. Titanic.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. That's an amazing, incredible news. Well, we look forward to reading those. Well, there's four books, including the Titanic. So look forward to reading those and keep us posted on the screenplay and how that's developing. So really, really exciting. If people want to find you on social media or your website, where's the best place for them to
I'm
go?
the easiest person in the world to find. NelsonAspen.com, Instagram, X, Twitter. I'm everywhere. If you want to come to Ireland or you need advice on what book to read, or I actually do a lecture series for university students called Failing Forward, which is about how to, when you lose a job, like Neely O'Hara lost her show, like I lost my television show. I mean, that you shrug your shoulders and you say, that's showbiz.
Right.
That's how it goes. And I employ those two words for any mishap in life. You just got to say, that's showbiz, and move on. And you can't get to the next great thing until one thing ends. So it's not easy to look at that. It's not easy to look at a loss as a positive,
Right.
but you get used to it. Certainly in the entertainment industry, you get used to it. So yeah, find me, and I'm here for all of you.
Great. Fantastic. All right. I will leave the links in the description box for where you can follow Nelson and get his books as well and check out his website. So, Nelson, thank you so much again for coming on. Really, really appreciate it.
Anytime, as long as it's a movie I've seen. I love talking movies with you because you're so knowledgeable and enthusiastic that we're kindred spirits.
For sure. Thank you. Yeah, no, it was great having you again. And for those of you watching at home, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. If this is your first time here, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo. You will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. It is absolutely free to subscribe. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you are interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, I'd really appreciate the support. Please go to patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the Movies for full details. Thank you again, everyone, for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode.